Tianbao Fu Yao Lu. Chapter 187. An old friend's son. Li Hong returned to the courtyard on his own. The more he thought about it, the more infuriated he felt. When the entire army had been retreating from Chang'an, Li Hong had made his painstaking, intricate plans. The day his father took the throne was the day cunning sycophants had gained control of the court and started to guide the country down the path of destruction, to the point where the lives of thousands of citizens hung in the balance. On the Ma'i slope, he had set his plans into motion, and victory was originally within his reach. After the capital was moved, he would be able to act freely in building an entirely new Great Tang. In these past few days, the officials surrounding him were people like Yu Chaoan, who loudly proclaimed that Li Hong had been given the divine right to restore the country and that he would sweep away the cobwebs of decline that clung to the Great Tang, which caused him to feel a little like he was walking on clouds. Moreover, the old officials who held him back, like Geshuhan and Gao Xianzi, had already perished. As long as he managed to placate Guo Suiyi, the court under Li Hong's direction would naturally act according to his will, and his will alone. What he hadn't expected was the appearance of one Li Jinglong. Li Hong had long since forgotten about him. This thorn, Li Jinglong, was the kind that he disliked the most. In the past, when he had been a rich young master, Li Hong had thought of him as a young man of many talents, and Li Hong had intentionally curried favor with him. What he hadn't expected was that this bastard had no eye for things at all, and he freely directed the crown prince's army about, speaking carelessly under the pretext of being from a military clan. It was then that Li Hong gave up on his intentions. Afterwards, he heard that Li Jinglong had been tossed into the Longwu army to be a pretty face in the honor guard, so he no longer paid attention to this person. What was unexpected, however, was that after the exorcism department was created, Li Jinglong's attitude had become impossibly solemn, and what was more frustrating was that back in the day, Li Hong's father had acted on Li Jinglong's advice, and though the various officials often clashed with him, they still trusted each other. Even more lethal was the fact that though Li Jinglong was still young, his experience was comparable to that of a veteran advisor. To a crown prince, veteran advisors were always troublesome. Your Highness, Li Jinglong, Mo Rijin, Kong Hongjun, Lu Su, and Zhao Yun of the exorcism department are requesting an audience, a eunuch informed him quietly. Li Hong frowned. They're back again? And what's Zhao Yun? Send them in. The eunuch leaned over and whispered something else into Li Hong's ear, and Li Hong immediately flew into a great rage. What do you mean? Li Hong demanded. Prepare a welcome befitting of the monarch of another nation? Did you hear wrong? The eunuch shook his head fearfully. What kind of a person is the crown prince? Though he had already gotten Li Jinglong's response, Hong Jun couldn't resist asking once more. He's a warrior. Li Jinglong's answer was different from his first one. Hong Jun replied, I think it's best if you do it. Li Jinglong said, the meeting this time is one of great significance. I cannot do it. You promised me. Hong Jun grew a little uneasy. Li Jinglong began to chuckle. There are some things that are more effective if you say them compared to if I say them. The group stood outside the Jin Palace, waiting. Mo Rijin said, I feel like he won't do it. He will, Li Jinglong replied. Because he doesn't know what we want to do. They waited for a bit, and the eunuch came out to announce, Marquis, His Highness has commanded. If he will not do as I requested, Li Jinglong said, then we shall be leaving. These words struck the nail on the head, and the eunuch had no choice but to go back inside to pass the message along. They ended up waiting for a whole half a shishan, and the group sat around on the stairs outside, idling about for a brief period. The eunuch came out again and appraised the five of them, saying, Marquis, if you please. There were rules in place when the Great Tang had to greet foreign dignitaries, and there were special formalities to be observed when receiving the lords of other lands. However, ever since ancient times, the ruler of another nation coming in person to visit the emperor of the Li family had been a rare occurrence. Most of the time, it had been emissaries instead. Additionally, the capital had been shifted westward to Lingwu, and they did not have the resources in Chengdu to have a complicated setup. Li Hong had no choice but to summon the 6 armies, who were ordered to each send out a squadron of 10 people. He then sat facing south, leaving a guest seat open. Continuing to follow etiquette, he had a table set out, and the appropriate implements laid out on top, before summoning Li Jinglong into the hall. He really couldn't understand what Li Jinglong meant. He had first mercilessly and thoroughly ridiculed Li Hong upon his arrival. He had then informed Li Hong that the ruler of another nation had come to visit. This matter could be a minor one, but it could also be a major one. The Great Tang had just suffered a fresh defeat, so they could not afford to be careless in their foreign relations. If it was truly the ruler of another country, Li Hong could not afford to be impetuous. The officials of the Ministry of Rites just so happened to be in the Jin Palace. Amidst the sound of drums, Hong Jun strode into the hall first, clad in the robes of the exorcism department. The Master of Rites' expression was one of confusion, and he immediately came to a halt. Hong Jun walked into the hall, and he looked Li Hong right in the eye. Li Hong was confused, before he grew angry again, and with a dark look on his face, said, "Li Jinglong, where is the ruler of this other nation? Are you really trying to amuse yourself?" "I'm the ruler," Hong Jun replied. At that moment, everyone in the hall stopped breathing. Li Hong also sensed that something had changed, and his gaze swept over Li Jinglong and the rest of the group. It was at this moment that Li Jinglong left Hong Jun and sat down behind Li Hong, leaving Zhao Yun, Mo Rijin, and Lu Su trailing after Hong Jun as they came to the guest spot in the middle of the hall. "Just now, in front of outsiders, it was not convenient for me to say too much," Hong Jun said to Li Hong. "I originally wanted to go to Lingwu to see you, but we just so happened to run into you in Chengdu, so let's have a chat. Close the doors, and send all of the officials out." Li Hong. Li Hong was tongue-tied, and he studied Hong Jun again. He had seen this brat so many times that he had lost count, and for a while, he felt as if he was in a dream and hadn't yet come back to his senses. "Wait," Li Hong said. "You all are for real?" Li Hong could not shake the feeling that this group of people was acting on Li Jinglong's orders to play him, but Mo Rijin said, "Hong Jun is my liege." Instantly, Li Hong was flabbergasted. When Li Jinglong hadn't been around in the past, Mo Rijin had led the exorcism department, and Li Hong was actually a little more familiar with him. He knew that this tall, skinny young man was very methodical in his actions, and he never lied. "What country are you the ruler of?" Li Hong asked. "Have them leave, then we'll talk," Hong Jun reiterated. "His Highness' body is one that is more precious than thousands of gold pieces." Yu Chaoen protested. "How can you be allowed to stay alone in the same room as him?" "If I really wanted to do something," Hong Jun asked in return, "would you be able to stop me?" Li Hong had heard a lot about the battle situation in Chang'an from Hu Sheng of the 6 armies. Chu Yongxi had summoned Xiao and Hong Jun had slaughtered his way through in every direction, so no normal mortals were their opponents to begin with. Upon hearing that question, he ordered the rest of them out, before saying, "Yu Chaoen will remain. Summon Hu Sheng and Chen Suan Li." Afterwards, the guards shut the main doors, and Li Jinglong said, "Your Highness, this individual is the Yao King in the human realm." After the Black Jiao Xiaoyu was defeated, the Yao tribes of the world united and nominated him as their leader. As soon as those words were spoken, Hu Sheng, Yu Chaoen, and Chen Suan Li's faces all turned as gray as dirt. Li Hong suddenly remembered the words that Yang Kuozhong had spoken a long time ago, back when the exorcism department had just been founded. Back then, Yang Kuozhong had warned Li Longji that there was someone in the exorcism department with the bloodline of Yao, and that in the future, they would bring about a great disaster. After that, Li Jinglong used his actions to persuade Li Longji that with the illustrious emperor on his throne, thousands of future dynasties and countries would use them as an example. It was only with that the emperor stopped bringing this matter up. Emperor of the human realm, Hung Jun said, upon learning that you are to succeed the throne and become the next emperor, this king has come to congratulate you. Li Hung still hadn't woken from the state of shock this development had put him in. He simply watched Hung Jun dumbly, before murmuring, "Kong Hung Jun, your origins are extraordinary. My father was once the lord of the Yaojin Palace in the Taihang Mountains," Hung Jun replied, matter-of-factly. "Before his passing, he transferred the position to me. I hope that your great Tang shall be blessed by the heavens and will continue to prosper." And saying that, Hung Jun called up the pentacolor sacred light. A barrier of divine light appeared in his hand, turning into a flying peacock that flew towards the group. Hu Sheng couldn't help his exclamation of surprise. When the little glowing peacock flew towards Li Hung, it suddenly scattered into motes of light and vanished. Li Hung's head spun for a time, and he asked, "Since you were born as the Yao King, what intentions did you have, coming to my great Tang?" Back then, Hung Jun was still a prince, Li Jinglong explained to Li Hung on Hung Jun's behalf. He came down to the human realm to gain experience, and to shoulder the destiny of reuniting the Yao tribes that had long since split apart. "Humans and Yao have different means to the same end," Li Hung muttered. "You and I are not enemies. Are the three people behind you all Yaogwai?" Mo Rijin and Lu Su possess the power of transformation, and strictly speaking, could not be counted as people. Though the two of them did not admit that they were Yaogwai, at the heart of it, they would be counted in the Yao tribes under the condition of not being able to be categorized. Zhao Yun, on the other hand, was a legitimate Yao, and he promptly replied, "That's right, we all are. Should I transform so you can see?" Li Jinglong was about to stop him when he suddenly had a thought. There was no reason why he shouldn't do so. With that, Zhao Yun suddenly transformed into a huashi and flew into the air. Everyone exclaimed at that, letting out shouts of panic, and Li Hung took a step back. Zhao Yun's transformation was remarkable in that he could be big or small, and he simply circled around the hall before landing and sitting back down. "The gray wolf, the white deer and the huashi," Hung Jun continued stoically, "have deep roots within my Yao tribes." The plates and cups on the table were in utter disarray. Li Hung's shock grew even deeper, and he said, "Even though you, the Yao King, have come in person, I am the emperor of the human realm, and I have the protection of the Ziwei star." "You do not," Zhao Yun suddenly said. Li Jinglong's expression immediately changed. Zhao Yun, however, continued earnestly, "You are not the eldest scion of the emperor, and you do not have the aura of the Ziwei star about you. Only after you have observed the appropriate sacrificial rites and ascended the throne are you able to gain the power of the Ziwei star, as well as the protection of the heavens and the earth." Zhao Yun's words were truthful, but to Li Hung's ears, they were incomparably harsh. "What are you trying to do?" Li Hung asked darkly. "Say it. Good will win out against evil in the end, and if you are hoping to take advantage of my great Tang's perilous state, even if the entire nation perishes, we shall not yield." "It's not that serious," Hung Jun said, torn between laughing or crying. "I'm just here to congratulate you." Li Jinglong added, "Your Highness, Hung Jun's mother was a human, and he has long viewed humans with a positive regard. In the past, he traveled through Chang'an and grew even more sentimentally attached to the splendor of the human world. This time, when Mara descended to the earth, you also know that the Yao tribes did quite a lot," Li Hung replied mildly. "I wish to establish an agreement with the humans, one that will last thousands of years," Hung Jun said, lifting his cup of tea, "one where we shall never cross swords in battle." Li Hung smiled bitterly. "Your exorcism department and the Yaogwai have long since been accomplices. Do you think I am able to turn you down? Our enemies, from the very start, have never been the entirety of the Yao tribes, Li Jinglong said. Humans are the most intelligent of all creatures, Hung Jun explained. And we, the other residents of the Divine Land, are willing to bridge the gap between us with the exorcism department. We shall assist the Emperor of the human realm and fulfill the revival of the Great Tang. We are even less willing to see humans and Yaos murdering each other. Upon hearing these words, Li Hung lost his anger. He thought deeply for a moment, before saying, "Allow me to think carefully on this first." The fact that Li Hung would be unable to give Hung Jun a response on the spot was something that Li Jinglong had long since predicted. Hung Jun nodded and said, "If that is the case, then I shall be taking my leave." Li Hung, then you. Before An Lushan is slain, I will still remain as one of the members of the exorcism department, Hung Jun replied. After the human realm is at peace, I shall go elsewhere. Afterwards, Li Jinglong, Hung Jun, and the rest of the group came out. Hung Jun's back was covered in sweat, and he asked Li Jinglong, "How did I do?" All the things that Hung Jun had said in front of Li Hung were evidently things that these two had agreed upon beforehand. Li Jinglong began to chuckle, and he gave him a thumbs up. Lu Su and Mo Rijin leaned up against the palace wall, studying Li Jinglong. Mo Rijin suddenly spoke. "Zenji. Li Jinglong, after this, everyone will act on their own. 3 days later, we shall set out together again, heading towards the Zoage Basin." "Impressive," Mo Rijin said. "Impressive," Lu Su echoed, smiling. Mo Rijin and Lu Su left, shoulder to shoulder, setting forth to wander the city of Chengdu. Hung Jun's head was filled with fog, and Li Jinglong couldn't help but smile abashedly. What did they mean? Hung Jun asked, confused. "They were praising you," Li Jinglong said. "Evidently they were praising you." Hung Jun's expression was one of confusion. He was unaware that a new era was slowly unfolding right there in his and Li Jinglong's palms. That afternoon, the two of them headed towards the thatched cottage in Chengdu. A rudimentary thatched hut had been built on the outskirts of the city, and the thatch hadn't even been laid down evenly. Li Bai and Du Fu sat across from each other in the hut, drinking wine. Du Fu looked dejected and gloomy, and he sighed. When Hung Jun went inside, however, he let out a yelp of joy. "You're still alive," Li Bai said drunkenly. Come, come. Drink some wine." Li Jinglong had just sat down and laughingly chatted a bit when a servant came to the door, delivering the message that the crown prince was asking for him. Li Jinglong sighed. Truly, he won't let anyone rest for even a moment. Li Bai replied easily, "His Highness has been constantly wondering about you these past few days, so giving you more favor is expected." Li Jinglong said, "I'm afraid he's probably going to curse me out instead." But since the two kings had met, the crown prince summoning him was also an expected occurrence. He had no choice but to leave Hung Jun in Li Bai's care and come pick him up after he was done with this. On the other side, Atai had just returned to where the exorcism department was temporarily staying, only to find that everyone had already headed out into the city of Chengdu to wander aimlessly about. Only Tu Reinduct was waiting inside, her baby was feeding again. "Why is he eating again?" Atai asked. "He has to eat so many meals every day. Do you have enough milk for him?" Tu Reinduct replied, "Children are all like this." Atai was playing with the child when a guard came to the door, informing them that Great General Guo Suiyi was requesting his presence. Tu Reinduct startled, before saying, "Do you know him?" Earlier in the day, Atai had already dimly sensed that the other had evidently discovered his background. He had even invited Tu Reinduct along this time. With that, Atai brought his wife and child with him, heading towards the manor where Guo Suiyi resided. As confirmation, as soon as Guo Suiyi saw Atai, he asked, "Isai?" Upon unexpectedly meeting a face from the past, Atai chuckled. "You are. Back in the day, you were still in swaddling clothes when your father brought you to see me," Guo Suiyi said, smiling jovially. Today, it was for your sake that I also stopped trying to have Li Jinglong removed from his position. Zhenji is a good person, Tu Reinduct couldn't resist saying. You all blame him, but if it wasn't for him, everyone in Chang'an would have long since perished. Guo Suiyi let out another loud burst of laughter. Compared to Geshuhan with his stubborn will and fiery temper, this veteran general was evidently more well-rounded, and his temper was milder as well. He immediately had a banquet laid out, and he and Atai reminisced about the past. As it turned out, back in the day when Tegla and his father Isai had come to the Central Plains and asked Li Longji for reinforcements, his father had come to know Guo Suiyi during those days he stayed in Luoyang. Isai had come down in the world and Guo Suiyi was in the prime of his life, but the two of them unexpectedly struck it off. After Isai's wife gave birth to Tegla in Luoyang, he and Guo Suiyi had bid each other farewell, and carrying his infant son in his arms, had left. In the blink of an eye, many years passed, and now his old friend's son had already formed a family, come back to the Great Tang, and even become an exorcist, which was something that Guo Suiyi couldn't help but tear up at. Atai was a little sorrowful when he discussed his past. Guo Suiyi had known a long time ago that Isai had passed, but he did not know how cruel his passing had been. Isai had fought with his 200 Sasanian cavalry against a 300,000-strong army of black-clad Abbasid warriors, and the king of the Sasanians had perished on that battlefield. The cavalry leader's son from back then, Atai explained to Guo Suiyi, the sword of the empire, is called Ashinakayan. Today, he just so happened to go out to buy us some food, that helps with milk production, so he wasn't home. Guo Suiyi's eyes were wet, and he nodded several times, saying, You were born in Luoyang, and it is evident that you and the Great Tang have long since been fated to be. In the coming days, why don't you stay in this land and make a living here? I can see that Li Jinglong is a commander who can distinguish right from wrong, and he has the daring and cunning to do great things. Why shoulder such a heavy burden and let it crush you? Atai simply remained silent. After Guo Suiyi finished talking, he simply smiled sadly. Tu Reinduct chuckled. I did try to persuade Tegla to remain in the Great Tang. Atai interrupted. I will definitely go back. Tu Reinduct fell silent at that. Guo Suiyi said, Before you leave, I'll mention this to His Highness the Crown Prince again. Atai hurried to thank Guo Suiyi. But the Great Tang of today had long since established relations with the Abbasids. Several generations had passed, and yet when had the dynasty of the Central Land ever cared about the Sasanian Empire, which had been lost and hadn't been reclaimed for over 70 years. The most frustrating thing was that even though it was clear there was no hope left at all, Atai still could not let it go. He suddenly remembered something, and he asked Guo Suiyi, General Guo, back in the day, you knew my father. Did you ever know if my father, while he was still alive, possessed a golden artifact? An artifact? Guo Suiyi asked, thinking for a moment. What matter of item does that refer to? Atai didn't know either whether his old man had taken the golden arrows, the Yao subduing staff, or the great sun ring. He didn't even know if his father had gotten anything at all. He was simply trying out his luck in asking this question. Guo Suiyi thought deeply for a while, as if he was trying to recall something. A while passed, but Atai didn't dare to interrupt him. Guo Suiyi had the servants serve dinner, and he invited Atai and Tu Reinduct to eat first. Just as they were eating, Guo Suiyi began to ask Atai about what happened after Chang'an. Partially, it was for the sake of squeezing more information out of him, but partially it was out of genuine concern. Atai knew that it was likely Li Hong had asked him to do so, to confirm if Li Jinglong was acting rebelliously. After all, on the battlefield of the imperial court, many of the officials feared or dreaded the exorcism department at least a little. Moreover, after the 3 consecutive battles of Luoyang, the Tong Pass, and Chang'an, the common people were treating Li Jinglong as if he was a divinity, and rumors were flying about. Atai did not mince his words. Instead, he replied to each question earnestly, and everything he said basically matched up with what Guo Suiyi had learned. As they spoke, Guo Suiyi suddenly remembered, and he said, "There seemed to have been such an item." "Atai. What was it?" Atai asked, frowning. "It was a golden hoop," Guo Suiyi said, gesturing with his hands. "About the size of a bracelet, with the 9 words of truth carved on it." Atai immediately asked for paper and a brush, and he asked Guo Suiyi to draw it out, before asking, "Did he hand it over to someone?" Guo Suiyi replied, "The first time your dad met me, he did not have this golden hoop. But some day after that, he started wearing it on his hand, and before he set off on his journey, he was still wearing it when he bid me farewell. I imagine he brought it back to the western regions." End chapter. Tianbao Fu Yao Lu. Chapter 188. 3 Discussions on the Future of the World. As evening fell around him, Li Jinglong arrived at the Yulon Bridge outside the Jin Palace. Li Heng was currently feeding the koi fish in the river. From amidst the multitude of koi fish appeared a long fish with dirt yellow scales, and while Li Heng wasn't paying attention, it stuck its head out and ate some of the fish food. After it was done, it sank back down again, and when it flipped itself back into the water, it revealed a hairy leg that kicked a few times. That was, in fact, their very own Carpiao. Li Jinglong. The Carpiao swam away, while Li Jinglong wondered, how did it end up swimming to this place? What were his requests? Li Heng asked. Without even needing to guess, Li Jinglong could understand what the Crown Prince was getting at, and he said, he hopes that the exorcism department can become a bridge, a place where humans and Yao can interact peaceably, so that there are no more wars because of that in the human realm. Li Heng replied, I cannot accept that. At the heart of it, this all came about because of the Yaos and devils. If An Lushan hadn't been a devil and Xiaoyu hadn't been a Yao, how could the troubles of today have come about? Your Highness, Li Jinglong replied, it is often said that the trouble that is Mara was brought about because of the havoc the Yao tribes wreaked, but at the heart of it, this matter has come about solely because of the humans. Li Jinglong started to talk. He began with the Yao tribes, then spoke about the resentment in the world, then the great battles that spanned dynasty after dynasty. Li Heng's eyes were filled with disbelief. In the end, Li Jinglong said mildly, they all say that Yaos are cruel and merciless, but all the fighting that the Yao tribes do is for the sake of their own survival. Have they ever ceaselessly shed blood for the sake of power and desire like humans do? And he finally concluded, the Yao tribes hope to obtain a region of land in the Shuzhong region. It does not have to be large, and it can be within the mountains. They wish to gather all the Yao tribes that have been driven out by the Ungshi rebellion in one spot, so that they may live there happily and in peace. It shall fall to the exorcism department to surveil and govern them. That way, we can prevent them from being used by Mara ever again. Let me think about it some more. Li Heng's response to Li Jinglong was still the same as it had been. For one, this was not something that could be disseminated, which limited him from seeking out the opinions of his collective advisors. Moreover, this involved Yaos and devils, ghosts and monsters, so even his collective advisors couldn't provide him with much of an opinion. Li Jinglong was the only knowledgeable expert on this that he could lean on. Moreover, letting the Yao tribes found a nation within the borders of the Great Tang was no insignificant matter. If this information leaked, history books for all eternity would pin the blame for this on his head. Stop thinking about it for now, Li Jinglong pressed him. Your Highness. Then how shall I explain that to all the people in the world? If the Yao tribes do not occupy some land, Li Jinglong said, lowering his voice, do they no longer exist? Xiaoyu is a prime example of a failure committed by a predecessor, he is a peril that threatens the Great Tang today, all because of that havoc that Black Jiao wreaked in Chang'an many years ago. Is this still not clear enough? Li Heng asked in response, and if I don't agree? Li Jinglong looked calmly at Li Heng. Today, the ruler of the humans and the ruler of the Yaos met. I thought that your highness already understood the situation very clearly. His meaning was evident as well. This group of Yaoguai, especially Heng Jun, are in no way afraid of you. Even if you don't agree to their demands, they'll find a way to create a gathering place. The Great Tang's power is a false facade. The abruptness of the Ungshi rebellion was like a blow to the head. All of the splendor of the grandiose Tang dynasty had vanished like smoke on the wind. The only person who had the ability to do battle with the Yao tribes was Li Jinglong, but all he have under his command are his few subordinates in the exorcism department. If they were really to fight, these Yaoguai would beat them soundly. Your Highness, Li Jinglong added, Heng Jun is one of us. You meant he's yours, Li Heng muttered. Li Jinglong had an expression of as long as you know on. Li Heng truly both loved and hated this subordinate of his. He was immune to both soft and hard tactics, and nothing got past him. He sucked in a deep breath, and in the end, replied, I have 3 conditions. Li Jinglong nodded. Even if your highness did not mention it, this subordinate has mulled over how the Yao tribes and the human race will interact with each other in the future. Li Heng's heart leaped at that, and he focused on Li Jinglong. Tell me. The first rule, Li Jinglong recited, is that no matter how much time changes things, even if your highness hoped for eternal rule has passed, the exorcism department will remain. It shall be passed down through the generations and no changes shall be made to it. It shall not fall under the rule of the 3 departments and 6 ministries, it shall only obey the orders of the emperor and the crown prince. Exactly, Li Heng said. But how shall you guarantee that? The heart lamp, Li Jinglong said. The second rule is that every successor to the exorcism department must be the successor to the heart lamp. In reality, after Li Jinglong and Heng Jun had come to a decision, they had been thinking over this exact same issue on the boat ride into Shu. This was also the question that everyone had been forced to face ever since the formation of the exorcism department. It was a sharp sword, so how could they guarantee that it wouldn't be used by the country? Additionally, how could they guarantee that it would not turn on themselves? If this had been before, Li Jinglong would not have believed it at all, that many years later, after he died, the exorcism department would still fight on behalf of protecting the divine land as loyally as they did now. He would even have suspected that his death wouldn't be necessary, if, one day, he grew old and feeble, things would start sliding backwards, and no one would be able to stop it. Whether humans were by nature good or evil was something that the 100 schools of thought had squabbled over ever since there were humans living in the divine land. It was an important question that had yet to be decided, and the great battles over legalism and Confucianism that had occurred during the Warring States period rose exactly because of that. In other words, if there were no strong, forceful measures constraining the exorcism department, in 10 years or 100 years, or even 1,000 or 10,000 years, the day would come where these exorcists, who were different from mortals, would plunge the entire world into the abyss. No matter if it was Li Longji or Li Heng, both of them had brought up this issue multiple times, and before today, Li Jinglong hadn't even been able to convince himself against that series of events. But during the Ungshi rebellion, throughout the process of losing and regaining the heart lamp, Li Jinglong had realized a third possibility, though it was one that still needed confirmation. That possibility was, could the inheritor of the heart lamp unwaveringly protect the human realm? Why is that? Li Heng asked coldly. The nature of divinity, Li Jinglong replied. The unity of man and the heavens. The boundaries between the world and the self disappear, as the world and the self are one. This was encroaching on the axiom of the Daoist school of thought, the idea of mysteries within mysteries. The Li Tang dynasty raised the teachings of Laozi during the founding of the nation, so Li Heng understood the general, superficial meaning. Li Jinglong pondered deeply for a moment, before turning his head to look at Li Heng. The heart lamp is something that a divinity bestows, and it contains the nature of divinity within it. It takes upon itself the duty of delivering all living beings from torment. Even someone who bears ill will in his heart will have a great awakening after receiving the heart lamp and become a Buddha. Li Hong asked. That is truly fantastical. The heart lamp can suppress selfish desires, that is correct, Li Jinglong said. But when it selects its master, it also does not select a certain inheritor from a selected pool without ever changing its pattern. Otherwise, how could it have vanished from the Chen family's bloodline many years ago? Li Hong had carefully read over the entire report that Li Jinglong had put together, and he knew that the heart lamp was originally passed down through the Chen family's bloodline, but in a specific generation they found themselves suddenly devoid of it. It had vanished without a trace. What is the third? Li Hong asked. The third rule, Li Jinglong said, is that the 9 states of the Central Plains must each set up a branch of the exorcism department within them. That will allow the exorcism department to become a division in truth, in more than just name. The exorcists must remain hidden within the general populace, and they must not flaunt their powers. The Zenchi of the exorcism department must be someone who is suitable for the role, who is then further nurtured into the role. Perhaps in the future, they will be florists or odd jobs workers, peddlers, and servants, Li Jinglong said. But they must remain hidden within the general populace so that they can keep watch over any yaos or evil that will bring about destruction, to prevent something like the Ungshi rebellion from happening ever again. Aside from that, they must not involve themselves in any political affairs of the nation. Li Hong replied, to tell you the truth, rumors fly among the common people. As soon as an exorcist takes action and deals with a yao, people will inevitably find out. There is a type of medicine called the Lihan flower pollen, Li Jinglong said. Cultivated properly, it can make people forget about what happened in the short term, and that can be given to the exorcism department to use. If the bearer of the heart lamp falls prey to some harm and is no longer able to perform the duties of his office, what then? Li Hong asked solemnly. Akalanatha will act as the acting supervisor, Li Jinglong replied. Whoever bears the sword of wisdom will inherit the true powers of Akala, and they will be in charge of supervising both the Yao tribes and the exorcism department, to prevent any one side from causing a disturbance. Though Li Jinglong was always out in the field leading his subordinates, the reports he delivered when a case was concluded were always watertight. The heart lamp, the true power of Akalanatha, and such things were considered top secret, and knowledge of them was restricted to Li Hong and Li Longji. Naturally, Li Hong understood the entire process. After saying what he had to say, Li Jinglong fell silent, leaving Li Hong some time. He knew that Li Hong was bound to accept this, because aside from doing so, he had no other choice. The autumn sky arched vast above, and large patches of clouds floated by. Li Hong tilted his face up towards the sky, and he thought for a long time, until the sun sank into the west. Finally, he let out a long sigh, and he replied, I have one more condition. Li Jinglong nodded, so Li Hong continued. It's not that bestowing a region of land is not impossible, but it must be under your name. Li Jinglong replied happily, the 3 gorges will do. Then I shall bequeath upon you the title of the Marquis of Shu, Li Hong said, on behalf of the work that you put into fighting in Lushan. Li Jinglong hurried to bow and thank him for the gift. Li Hong continued, but this will be what Father Emperor declared, as the last imperial edict that he will issue before I succeed the throne. Li Jinglong knew that no matter what, Li Hong was unwilling to shoulder the burden of this responsibility, and he replied, this subject hears and obeys. As night fell, Li Jinglong swiftly walked out of the Jin palace. He let out a long sigh, his palms were covered in sweat, but finally, he had lived up to Hung Jun's hopes. As he returned to where they were staying, he saw Hung Jun hammering away at that ring that had been lost and found again. Hung Jun looked up at him and smiled. You're back. I'm back. Li Jinglong smiled back as he sat down, pulling Hung Jun into his arms. This day seemed like yet another ordinary day of the countless ordinary days that they had lived. The seed that Li Jinglong planted today was a seed that would slumber deeply in the soil of the divine land, and perhaps it would not truly sprout even for the rest of his life, but as time passed, the exorcism department would begin to sprout and grow into a vast, overarching tree that would protect this land. At night, everyone gradually returned. Atai brought the news regarding the golden sun ring, and Li Jinglong was greatly shaken after hearing it. Atai continued, "Back then, I suspect it was left in my lord father's hands. Isai had died at the hands of the black-armored Abbasid army, and the great sun ring had been lost to the general populace. How were they supposed to find it?" Turandak spread out a map of the Abbasid Empire in Asia Minor, and Atai explained to the group, "After Guo Suiyi told us of the whereabouts of the golden sun ring, Qian and I had a discussion. We concluded that this artifact is either in Ctesiphon, or it was brought to Baghdad. When my lord father died, he was granted cremation according to the practices of the Zoroastrian religion, but his possessions were taken away by the Abbasids." "It's too dangerous," Li Jinglong said, frowning. "Are the three of you planning to return alone to your ancient country that has been conquered by enemy troops?" Ashanakayan replied, "I came from there, and it'll be easy for me to get back in. When I find the golden sun ring, I'll slip out as fast as I can." Atai flashed the godly flame ring, saying, "My religion still has believers in Baghdad. Now, I have obtained the godly flame ring, which means I can gather these believers, so there shouldn't be any chance that my life is in danger." Morajin looked pleadingly at Li Jinglong. "You can't let them go on their own." Morajin's meaning was that everyone should go together, but Li Jinglong continued to frown. Lu Su pointed out, "If a group of outsiders appears in Baghdad, who aren't familiar at all with either the people or the culture, we'll probably end up slowing them down more." What Li Jinglong was worried about was this as well. Whenever the exorcism department worked as one, their goal became even more obvious, and Atai and Ashanakayan would also have to spare extra energy to look after them. Atai said, "We'll set out today, and we won't bring Turandak along." Finally, Li Jinglong came up with a compromise. "We'll wait for you for 120 days. If we are unable to meet up at that time, then we will assume that you two ran into danger, and the exorcism department must set out to assist you." Atai wanted to hold out for longer, but under Turandak's glare, he finally had no choice but to nod in acquiescence. Everyone raised their cups to toast to the success of Atai and Ashanakayan's journey. Turandak resolved in the end to remain in Chengdu, so she wouldn't be handing her head over on a silver platter. During the feast, Li Jinglong mentioned his and Li Hong's discussion, and the matter of the Yao tribes building their nation had finally been resolved. Hung Jun hadn't thought that it would be resolved so quickly, and he actually found himself speechless in the face of that revelation. "I'm not ready yet," Hung Jun protested. "This is too soon." Chu Yangxi, however, couldn't stop smacking the table and shouting praise. The reason, however, was because of the 3 edicts that Li Jinglong had created that related to the exorcism department. He remarked, "As long as they can be maintained, then I am sure this will be a great exploit that will last for millennia to come." Morajin, Atai, and the rest of them were moved by this, that Li Jinglong would have such a vast view. It truly exceeded their expectations, and it signified that if this matter that he and Li Hong had discussed today could come to fruition, Li Jinglong would truly have earned a place in history. This was something that even Direnja back in the day hadn't been able to accomplish. "Think about how future generations will make statues of you," Lu Su couldn't help but find this funny. "Wouldn't it be awkward if they worshipped you like you were the founder of a school of thought?" Li Jinglong replied earnestly, "They will not make statues of me, nor will this be recorded. The reason that the exorcism department can be great is because of the support from every one of you. How can someone who lives in this world be enamored over an undeserved reputation? I, for one, would rather that this department, from now on, will no longer view any one individual as the founder of the department. You each possess great skills, which are the sum of all that you have learned over the course of your lives. Spreading this out amongst all of you makes it happier for all. But setting up branches throughout the 9 states will be a great undertaking, Chu Yangxi said. After we are done here, we can split up, Li Jinglong said, smiling. We will not only take a vacation, but we will also set up branch divisions. What Hung Jun loved the most was going out to play, and he immediately shouted in agreement. Everyone drank some more wine. It was a pity that Li Guinan wasn't present, as after he had escorted Li Longji into Shu, he had taken a boat down to Jiangnan. That night, the members of the exorcism department drank until they were dead drunk. Autumn was chilly in the Shu region, and the entire city was filled with fluttering blossoms, which scattered all over the courtyard. Once the night passed and white-lined the eastern horizon, Gao Lishi appeared in person, bringing with him Li Longji's last imperial edict. This time, he did not have any silks and brocades, nor did he bestow any riches upon them, and of course, there were no Menzi Mingao. All the edict stated was that Li Jinglong had been bestowed the title of the Marquis of Shu, and he would be overseeing the 3 gorges region of the Changjiang, including Fengdu and Fengjia. For 70 li around, there were no fertile fields, nor were there any signs of human habitation. The region was covered in mountains. No matter which general of the Great Tang it was, if they were bequeathed a marquis title just like this, they would probably have rejected it on the spot to make Li Hung lose face, and they would probably have brought their armies with them at any moment to seek retribution, but Li Jinglong was already very satisfied. After sending A Tai off, Li Jinglong and Hung Jun laid out their plans. For now, they would be on break. It would not be good for the exorcism department to be too involved in the matter of the Yao tribes creating their capital after all, so it would fall to Li Jinglong to assist Hung Jun in carrying it out. Mo Rijin was happy to take Lu Su out on a vacation if they didn't need to act in tandem, and Chu Yangxi wandered idly about the lands of Shu, visiting various scholars and poets. Tu Rainduk moved into the Hu merchant guild that Hangolan had set up, and Hangolan would look after her. End chapter.